Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday and welcome to the Rangers Review Morning Briefing. It is Monday, the 12th of February. I'm Derek Clark, back from my holidays, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Good. More interested in how it's going with you and how the minus 17 temperatures you were in, how you survived that.
Yeah, it was a tad chilly to say the least over in Norway for a few days. Yeah, you think it's cold over here. When we get back off the plane, we're thinking to ourselves it was a cool 6 degrees, I think, over in Manchester Airport, and we were absolutely roasting because of what we're used to back in Norway. But absolutely fantastic. Didn't get eaten by a polar bear, which was good news. Yeah, it was super. I'd recommend the trip, folks, if you fancy it. Not only Svalbard, where we went for a few nights, but Oslo and Sandefjord as well, down the south of Norway, was great as well. Snow everywhere. So if you like your cold holidays, then I'd heartily recommend it. But people aren't tuning in to talk about travel, I'm sure, Joshua. They're here to tune in to hear us talk about Rangers, and it's been pretty good. Tuned into the game during the week against Aberdeen. Good to see Rangers secure all 3 points in that one. And then at the weekend, I think it was as routine as it possibly could be. I mean, we would all like to have seen more goals at Ibrox. Philip Clement also said that in his post-match interviews as well. But it's all about progression in the Scottish Cup. And Rangers do progress to the quarter-finals, where they will meet Hibs at Easter Road. That game will take place on the weekend of March the 9th and 10th, and it will, as ever with Rangers, it will be selected for TV coverage. Before we go into detail about the game at the weekend, Joshua, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors, of course, the MPH Group. If you're looking for some home improvements, folks, or even a new boiler, I know that I'm looking for a new boiler. Mine's is absolutely goosed. These are the guys to call. They've got flexible finance options available. The all-important links are in the description below. Joshua, you were there on Saturday. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, routine. I think it's the type of game, and Clement said after, didn't he, that he'd like to give the fans more goals. I think it was 44,000 almost there for a televised game at 5:30 on a Saturday. So yeah, I think that, as Chris mentioned after the game, I think that speaks to the mood around the place at the moment, that so many people turned out for what was a very kind of expected win, Derek. But I thought Rangers controlled it. I thought Ayr actually were pretty brave at points on the ball and were a bit more open than some Premiership teams are when they come to Ibrox, to be honest, Derek. Rangers got their first goal at a good time. Borna Barisic looked like the most surprised man in Ibrox. If you watch the celebration, it takes him a couple of seconds to realise that he scored. After that, I thought you think Rangers might press on a little bit more. I think they were always in control, although neither goalkeeper had many saves, really. I've not got the XG to hand, but Ayr, had quite a few attacking corners, managed to make their way up the pitch a bit. But with that said, I don't think it was a game, Derek, where the result was ever really in doubt. I think the game needed a wee bit of a lift, which Cantwell brought from the bench, and we'll speak about him. I thought Oscar Cortez was really good in that first half, playing on the left-hand side. So routine, Rangers' good form keeps going, and now they look ahead to playing Ross County in midweek, which is a big game and another opportunity to go back joint top of the table. But yeah, the big story obviously of last week that you were away for, Derek, was that Aberdeen game, which felt like a big win. Sometimes these cup games, the tone kind of sets itself, and I think that can feed onto the pitch a little bit as well. But another win for Rangers. They're into the next round of the cup. A tricky draw. But yeah, they're good form this year under Clement. Keeps going. Asked Connor Goldson how he described the start to 2024, having been part of some not so good start, shall we say, after the winter break, and he just said it's been perfect. And I think that summarises what Rangers form has been like over the last month or so.
Yeah, absolutely. As Joshua says, Rangers will travel to Easter Road for that quarter-final clash. And if the last trip there is anything to go by, then we have nothing to worry about. But I'm sure Big Phil will have the players up for that game. The other games, incidentally, Morton will host Hearts after they beat Airdrie yesterday. Celtic at home to Livingston. Aberdeen will host Kilmarnock. Right, let's talk about some of the players you mentioned there over the weekend. Joshua, we'll start with Oscar Cortez. Keith Drummond says Cortez was brilliant. Rightly named man of the match. I thought he was lively, he was bright. He looks a real player, and I'm really excited about seeing this boy in action. He's the sort of guy that you would pay money to go and watch. He gets bums off seats, isn't he?
Yeah, obviously it's only one half of football, but I thought it was really exciting. I totally agree with the comment. I think Rangers, he looks like the type of winger who, as you say, will excite fans. And for someone who, he was always going to have to start quite quickly, I think, given the lack of depth that Rangers have on the left and the right, given the injury to Sima as well. And he's been thrown in for substitute appearances, came on against Aberdeen. I thought, especially in injury time, used the ball pretty well, and I think that's probably the first encouraging sign that he's been able to contribute quite quickly. But I thought that first half of football for a winger, Derek, in a game where Rangers, I think, have lacked this type of player for a long time, who's someone who can really control the tempo of a game from out wide, has an obvious goal threat. What stood out to me most about him was that he didn't just do the same thing. And we speak about this. I think we spoke about it quite a lot in relation to Matondo, that, you know, maybe the best wingers, it's not that they get the ball 20 times a game and take their man on 20 times. Maybe they only do it 8 to 10 times or 15 at tops. But they're varying what they do. They're keeping the ball at the right times. And Cortez given the freedom to move inside. I just thought is the fact that he didn't just do one thing, because early on he got the ball out wide, shifted it inside, hit the far post. And I think it would be tempting there for someone, a young player, to think, right, that's what's going to work. I'm going to do that time and time again. But I've got his touch map here, Derek, from where he received the ball, and you can see that actually. I don't know if you can take the sponsor. Tag away at the top, but he wasn't just receiving the ball in one area, and he wasn't playing with. I think Ridvan will probably help that dynamic as well, because he's more natural moving inside the pitch. Although Barisic scored his goal from there, but it was just that he did. Every time he got the ball, he seemed to do something different. So at times he was getting the ball wide and moving inside onto his right foot and hitting the far post, as we've seen in the first few minutes. There was a sequence of 2 or 3 minutes where he got the ball twice by the touchline and allowed the ball to roll through the defender's legs and went up the line that way. There was times where he was receiving with his back to goal and bouncing it off and then running in behind, which he created a decent opportunity from. There was times where he was just keeping the ball. I just thought it was a much more mature performance than I think you'd expect from a 20-year-old making their first start for Rangers. And all the usual caveats that we obviously need to see more of him. But I thought it was really exciting, and I'm interested to see what people in the comments think, simply because there was a lot of variation to his game. And if you're a fullback marking him in that game, Derek, I think it's difficult because you can't follow him all the time. You know that he's strong enough to hold the ball in with his back to goal, but he can spin you as well. We saw him go to the byline and flash a ball across quickly within the first minute, and obviously that's what leads to the goal as well, making that run in behind. So I think it was a game where you saw there's a lot of really exciting raw attributes here, but also from that 45 minutes, it looks like a player who kind of knows how to use those talents from out wide. As mentioned, I guess the risk with this transfer window was always going to be, okay, these players look exciting for the long term in terms of Diomande and Cortez. How quickly can Clement get them up to speed? I know that was Diomande's first start in a few months, but I think for Cortez in particular, Derek, that was an exciting first debut and showed again why Rangers were so excited about being able to get him into the club in January. Yeah,
most definitely. Just in terms of people's views on that, Chris says Cortez was exciting to watch. Totally agree, buddy. Kathy with the point says, impressed with Cortez. Still think we need a number 9. And there's a few points that came in as well. An interesting one from Alan. He says, Cortez is looking good. I think he'll be invaluable once he's settled into Glasgow and the team. That is something that Philip Clement touched on the day after he signed, after transfer deadline day, about not only being a talented player, Joshua, but that they would work really hard to make sure he settles into the way of life in Glasgow, because that is something that Jose Cifuentes struggled with, of course. Many supporters maybe fail to factor in at times. They just think a football player, they'll hit the ground running, but they need to integrate into the community, I'd imagine, and different way of life, especially for South Americans. I like that Clement said that he's got a good track record with working with Colombians, which is which is heartening. But if they can get him nice and settled and enjoying his football, which he looked like he certainly was in that first half against Ayr United, then Rangers certainly have a player on their hands. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, again, you always risk it just being 45 minutes, but I think he was much better than I thought he would be. I'd watched maybe, I don't know, two full games and lots of different clips of him, Derek, but it was just the way that I think Rangers for a long time, and hopefully Cortez can become this, I think they've lacked for a long time a winger who kind of has a more complete package where he looks like he's going to be a goal threat. He got off, 4 or 5 shots, ran in behind for the goal, ran in behind at one other moment as well. But he also looks like he plays with his head up, and it's just the variation that I think will be so important when you're trying to break defences down, not doing the same thing continuously. But Chris and I spoke about this after the game. When was the last time Rangers had a really good winger who could do it all? I think Kent for periods, but not, especially domestically, not overall. There was always a question about his goal contribution, although he had a couple of good seasons, and at times maybe that narrative could go too far. So I thought it was a really impressive debut. Diomande clearly just getting up to speed, but that game will hopefully do him the world of good. And I think looking ahead to it was at Wednesday night against Ross County, interested to see whether Cortez plays. I think his fitness is there because he didn't have a long winter break and he was playing before he came to Rangers. I'd like to see him continue in that role on the left. I know he can play on the right as well, but I'd like to see him play with Ridvan as well, and especially after that impressive first 45 minutes. Naturally faded a bit, Derek, as the game wore on, but for that first 45 minutes, I thought he's by far and away the brightest player on the pitch. Connor Goldson said that as well, and a couple of his teammates referenced Cortez post-match. So it looks like Rangers have an exciting player for the future, but again, hopefully someone who's going to be able to, as he was at the weekend, contribute this season and settle in quickly as well.
Yeah, some interesting comments coming in. First of all, shame on you, Joe. He says, I was very hungover on Saturday, but still made the trip to Ibrox. Unfortunately, wasn't singing as much as usual. Unacceptable, Joe. But yeah, we'll let you away with that one, buddy. And just looking ahead to the game on Wednesday, of course, Damien, not too sure if he's in the good books with his good lady. He says, I can't believe the missus thinks we're actually going for a meal on Wednesday. So let us know what she makes of that, buddy. You can take her to a meal at Ibrox, I guess, if you want to. I'm sure that is romantic enough. Do you think that's a romantic gesture, Joshua? Would you take your good lady to Ibrox for a meal before a game?
I don't think she'd be that happy about it on Wednesday. I actually seen that Rangers were doing a night with Mark Haley. I think it was a Valentine's dinner on the Thursday, maybe, or the Wednesday. So plenty of options for people this week if they want to treat their loved one to a night at Ibrox. Yeah,
let's get back to Cortez because there's some intriguing points I wanted to address. This one, Michael Climate, quite a big comment. He says, "Good morning, guys. Derek, hope you enjoyed your trip away." I did, buddy. Thank you. Regarding Cortez, do either of you think he could do a shift on the right wing as an option? Maybe him and Sima if he comes back, or Matondo? I think he can, Joshua. But would you agree with that?
He's played on the right a lot for his country, and actually on the right, I think what it allows him to do, the one part of his game that I don't think you saw, Derek, was he's not going to... So when he went to the byline on his left foot, it was always when the game was stretched. There was a couple of times where he was fronting his man up and kind of controlling that duel, but he wasn't able to cross on the left in the same way. And I think on the right, sometimes the reason he's played there in a higher possession team, because as you can see, he's a clever player, and not all wingers are clever players. You know, he was recognising, okay, this is the time to pop the ball off. This is when I should spin him behind. This is when I should take him on directly. And that's probably quite a hard thing to quantify in terms of numbers, but certainly watching it, I think everyone would agree that he looked like he was just pretty switched on about what to do when. So I think that's why a role on the right can work, because he's able to move inside, allow the right back to provide width, although Tavernier's been doing less and less of that this season. But then also he has a shift of pace to hit the byline. On the left, I think there's similarities to what Sima will do, because he'll run in behind. He's not maybe a winger who... He's a different winger to Matondo, but I do think he's still... I do think he is still a winger. Do you know what I mean? Sima thinks a wide forward, and we need to see more of Cortez. But he was still much more comfortable, I thought, receiving the ball in wide areas, kind of controlling his one-on-one against a man. You saw his footwork was really good as well. So I think he can play on both sides. I think there's similarities to what Sima will offer you with the running and behind, but I think it'll be a natural fit there that when he's receiving the ball in wide areas, we've not seen as much of Sima the goal that Cantwell scored against, was it Kilmarnock when Ridvan went inside and Cantwell attacked at the front post? That type of movement with Sima in the left back, we've not seen as much, because Sima's game, I don't think, is quite as listen, he's a brilliant player and he's been brilliant for Rangers, and especially in that role. But because he's not always played in a high possession team as a left winger, I think that's showed at points as well. So I think Cortez gives you an interesting option on both sides. It's clearly somewhere where I think Rangers I've needed quality to come into that team. Derek Matondo scored. He's had a few goal contributions. I think there's still question marks over him. Scott Wright came in at the weekend, but he's not someone who I think is going to start many games at all. Ross McCausland.
What do you make his performance, Josh? Because that was a real chance for him to shine. He never really took it, did he?
Nah, but I don't think there's anything surprising about that, Derek. I think we've been here before. I think he is clearly someone who has good attributes, because that's why he's been kept around. But equally, there's clearly a reason that he's not been able to make that jump of, I'm going to start 10 games in a row. And I don't think we really learned anything new. I think at times when he plays wide on the right, I don't know. I don't think that's his always best suited to him to play as an out-and-out winger. But I don't know if we really learned anything new from that game personally watching. I don't know if you in the comments agree, but I don't think Scott Wright's ever really put that kind of run of form together to say this is why I should be the starter in this team. We've seen moments of quality. We saw it at Aberdeen in the just wheel him out at Hampton, I think is what I would do. But there's a reality that you need squad players, isn't there? And some teams, when they come on at points, they can look like that. And I don't think it taught us anything new. I think McCausland remains the first choice in that area, but it'll be interesting to see if at times Cortez plays in there as well, and then hopefully Sima isn't too far away, and then you start to have again options in there like you now have in the middle of the pitch, which is starting to look like there's real competition for places once again there. Yeah, there certainly is. Just to end up on Cortez, Maka says, I think Cortez fills the Kent void. And Keith Wright and a few of you mentioned in the comments, do we know what the purchase price is in his option to buy? I don't know off the top of my head what that is. We'll try and find out for you, buddy. I know that Lons paid €4 million for him. I think 4.5. Yeah, 4.5. Lons are also owned by, and I think it's Millenarios. They're the same owner. Yeah. So I think it was the move didn't quite work out for him. He obviously was able to get into the European market as well. But yeah, I think he's someone who Rangers clearly had long-term ambitions for. When we did the piece on the website when he arrived, I think that the person Chris spoke to, who I can't remember off the top of my head, said this was someone who a year ago was the most raved about kid in Colombia in footballing terms. Obviously, that move to France didn't quite work out. They didn't play with wingers. They played with wing backs. And although Cortez, I think he worked back a fair amount, I don't think he's going to be a wing back. You can tell that about his game. So interested and excited to see how he does going forward, because it's been a while since I think you watched a winger at Ibrox and thought every time he gets the ball, what's he going to do? It's exciting to watch, and so it was refreshing to see that at the weekend. Yeah, he's on loan, of course. I remember when I spoke to the Lons podcaster, he wanted to keep him around. I'm sure there'll be some Lons fans that will be seeing what he's doing in Glasgow, maybe thinking, will we take him back? One player in sort of mirrored that for Rangers is Sam Lammers, who scored at the weekend and provided an assist for Utrecht against Fortuna Sittard. Stephen Kirkland with the point. Do you think we misused Lammers? I said this before he went, Joshua. I thought he would thrive at a team like Utrecht. No disrespect to them, but it's not exactly Rangers. He doesn't have the pressure on him as he did. I think that you hear the saying, the jersey is often too big for some players, and it was for Sam Lammers. But was he used in the wrong position, do you think? I know you touched on this before in a video. Do you think Rangers could have got more out of him? I think first and foremost, we shouldn't rewrite history, and that he didn't have a good Rangers spell, did he? No. And I think what you point out there, Derek, is correct, that for some players it's very fitting with Lammers' career, because he's had big moves, moved to Atalanta for €11 million. PSV wanted to keep him at the time. He was taken to Bayer Leverkusen. It's clearly not a question of someone who is a really bad football player, I think, but the mentality thing is something that has followed him around his career. And I'm not saying that necessarily as a weak mentality, because I don't know him, but clearly you could see that while in one regard, I think what you saw Cyril Dessers do was turn around one of the most difficult starts someone's ever had at Ibrox to Still don't think he's going to be Rangers' long-term number 9 necessarily, but the narrative, the story has changed around him over the last month or so, Derek. With Lammers, it just always felt like he wasn't able to I think really come out of his shell and show those performances. And it works both ways because supporters weren't really seeing anything to hold on to. But you look at pre-season, he was bright. He had bright moments. It's not as if he came and you thought he can never play football in pre-season. I think arguably he was probably the one who people looking at pre-season thought, yeah, he really looks like a good player. Contrast that to someone like Abdallah Sima, where I think it took a few months for people to actually see what he could bring to the team. So I think it's fitting with his career where he's not quite been able to. A lot of clubs haven't been able to unlock his talent, and that's not a new story in world football. Yeah. And Rangers have definitely been too guilty in the past of having too many players in the squad who once were promising young players, as opposed to what hopefully they've moved to more this January, which is signing more promising young players who are still on that upward curve, which I think Diomande and Cortez both fall into. So wish him all the best. It'll do Rangers the world of good if he does well there as well, Derek. He hadn't played as that out-and-out number 10 as much before, I think, is what you're referencing. And maybe there was times where he dropped naturally. There was times where he gave the ball up quite cheaply, and I think that was always something that was held against him. Anyone who watched him at Ibrox over the last 6 months will remember the groans when he maybe gave the ball up cheaply in the midfield because he's maybe more of a dropping forward than an out-and-out midfielder. But I saw his goal and assist, and his pass in particular was a really good one. Hope he does well. It'll benefit Rangers because they'll be able to get more money back on him and try and reinvest in the future.
Yeah, I want to talk about Todd Cantwell shortly, but this comment sort of just popped up. I wanted to address. Joe Connolly says, why was McCrory not used at the weekend? I know Chris asked the manager this in the post-match press conference if he thought about it, and he did say he did consider playing Robbie at the weekend, but decided to go with Jack in goals. Joshua, I thought it would be an ideal opportunity for Robbie McCrory. Were you surprised not to see him in goals?
Yes and no. I think Clement is not many of his decisions are being questioned, and I don't think you really can at the moment, Derek. So that there is that side to it. He does not strike me as someone who, Gio played John McLaughlin in the cup, didn't he? Yeah. And Alan McGregor in the league. I don't think that situation would have happened. You can understand why he'd be frustrated as Robbie McCrory, because the only chance he's had came at the end of last season when he did well. Then you have Jack Butland come in, who is quite good in goals, and the options are limited. Yeah, because I guess the difficult thing is when Rangers then go to Hibs away, I think Clement is the type of manager who's just going to play his strongest team. So I can understand it from both points of view, why you want to just keep consistency, keep that back four together that's now had clean sheets in every game bar one. I think since the winter break, but also from Robbie McCrory's point of view, you're looking at, well, where do I get games? And I think that's a totally valid point of view as well. And you've said for a long time you think he needs to go and play football, and I think if that was not clear before the weekend, which probably was, then I think it's even more clear now.
Yeah, he needs to go and carve a career somewhere. There's no point. He's too good to be sitting on the bench. I think that it was telling over the weekend. It was something, as I mentioned, the manager was thinking about, but he elected to go with Jack Butland, who incidentally on the fringes of the England squad as well. Would be delighted to see him included in that England squad for the Euros in the summer. I think he's good enough to be their number one, incidentally. But let us know if you disagree in the comments. Let's move on to Todd Cantwell then, Joshua. Wanted to discuss him in a bit of detail. I was at the game, the Aris Limassol game, when they get hooked in that first half, just after Aris had opened the scoring. And we're thinking to ourselves, has there been a relationship breakdown? Does Cantwell have a future under Clement? But he's blossomed in recent weeks. He looks back to his best. We have said on numerous videos, he's a game changer. He's a match winner. He can win games with a bit of quality, and he's now producing numbers as well. How impressive have you been with Todd Cantwell in recent games?
I wrote about him yesterday for the piece on the game on the website, Derek, and I just felt that, and again, interested to see what people think. Sometimes with a player, you can feel how the mood shifts around them, and I just feel like with Cantwell at the moment, it feels like he's probably taken that step that Nico Raskin has yet to, which is that he's had that kind of second wind of, okay, he's impressed initially, he's had a difficult start to the season with injuries. We'll come on to maybe talk. I know we're going to maybe do a little bit of an extra podcast later talking about this in more detail, Derek, but the role he's playing has changed. He started out on the right-hand side, and I think there's some interesting reasons as to why that might have happened. But it just felt like when he came on at the weekend, it was as if, okay, Rangers are bringing on their big players now, and that's what they needed him to be. When the transfer window closed, and you looked at Dessers, Cantwell, McCausland, Matondo, Sima obviously injured, Cortez and Silva both being kind of unknowns because no one had seen them play much. You needed Cantwell to be Rangers' big player. And after that Old Firm game, I think there was big questions about that. Now, I think the undertone to all this, the attacking discussion, is that because Rangers have not won a meaningful Old Firm for so long, until that happens, it's going to be held against players, I think all players, and I think understandably so. But it just felt to me like Cantwell, he came on with a bit more of a skip in his step. He obviously created the goal. And I thought, again, interested to see what people think about this theory, but I just thought he looked a bit more like himself. He has 4 goals in 5 league starts. He's overperformed his expected goals by a fair amount, so I don't expect that to necessarily remain at the same trajectory. But he gave this interesting interview last week, Derek, which I include in the piece, and he says, "I'm playing centrally as a number 10 now, and I'm giving out the numbers I think I can. The manager knows what my best position is." His words to me when he first arrived were, when I first came in, we had a few injuries, we had a few complications in a sense. "I'm playing in a position I like, and I think I'm showing it as my best position. I'm thankful to the manager for giving me that game time. I'm playing in a different number 10 role than I was before. It's a different style, a different way of playing, a different way that we are playing. You can see that. I'm not being asked to play the way I was last season." And he goes on to say, "I see a lot of comments, Todd's not getting involved, Todd's not doing this, but I'm being asked to play differently, and it is working." And I think that's true, Derek, because his role under Beale was the build-up was slower. It was always about moving towards the ball. He had a completely free role, whereas now it's more restricted. It's more about staying as the number 10, staying high to receive between the lines, running beyond the striker. If you think of his goals recently, think of Kilmarnock, Dessers is dropping, Cantwell's attacking the box. Not a goal we've seen him score loads of before, because again, quite often he'd be deeper in the pitch. If you think of his goal against Aberdeen, it's the exact same. He recognises with Silva dropping out and with Lawrence in there that the time is right to make the run beyond the striker. The Hibs goal, he scores away from home, and also I think I know it's not an assist against there, but he creates that goal. Yeah. And also the Livingston goal as well, I think are all examples of him staying high between the lines. And I think what his best quality is actually, he's not an explosive dribbler out wide who you want to isolate against people. But if you read what he said about his dribbling, he says he bases his touches off defenders. And I think that's one of his best attributes, the way he receives the ball, turns quickly in one motion and can break the lines that way by the way that he receives the ball. But I think you can see how over the last month in particular, as Clement said last week, he is kind of better understanding what is required of him. Even in the early moments in the game against Hibs, where I thought it's a perfect example of how he can take his frustration out in the right sense in the game, obviously kind of got barged over by the touchline. There was a few instances where he was dropping to receive the ball, and Rangers build up under Clement is a bit more direct, is a bit quicker. When he started to stay high, I think that's when he got his joy. So I think it's him understanding a little bit more of what Clement's style of play is about. And then also I think good management from Clement, and I wrote this after the Aris game, when he then went to start at number 10 against Hibs, because that was a bold decision to take him off in that Aris game, and it could have not worked well. I think Cantwell responded to it. I don't think there's ever been any questions about, is he a luxury player who doesn't work hard for the team? Everyone, again, right back to when he arrived, he's someone who works hard off the ball, who presses well. But sometimes he is more of an individualist, I think, in his play style, because, again, that's the type of player he is. He's someone who takes risks. He's someone who wants the ball, who wants responsibility. And it's been about tailoring that to Clement's overall style of play. The overall point, Derek, is that if Rangers are to win anything, and this was apparent at the end of the transfer window, they'd need their January signings to make an impact quite quickly. And I think they need the players who are there to step up. Dessers has had his purple patch with goals. He'll need to continue that over the course of the season. You need the likes of Matondo, McCausland to contribute in moments. You need Cortez to hit the ground running. You need Silva to score goals, as he has been. But more than anything, I think you need big players in that final third, big players to take responsibility. And I think it looks more at the moment that Cantwell is starting to step up to that, and hopefully that can, again, continue for the rest of the season.
Yeah, you can read Josh's brilliant piece on the website, folks. The link is in the description, as is Stevie's great interview, which you can find on the website as well, with the Rangers Chief Finance Officer, James Taylor, which is quite interesting. Go and check it out, folks. Lots of big talking points in there. That is also linked into the description below. And of course, we've got that deal on at the moment, just £4 for 4 months. You can see the little ticket below. If you're watching us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe to sign up. Right, we will be back a little bit later on, as Joshua mentioned there, as for YouTube members as well, folks. If there will be a lot of videos coming your way this week, not only extra content, but we've got our press conference reaction videos because we have a game on Wednesday and then again at the weekend. Looking forward to Wednesday. It's the game in the hand, Joshua. Just we'll talk about it more in detail tomorrow, of course. But a big opportunity for Rangers to go top of the league.
Yeah, and obviously Ross County have just changed the manager, and dare I say, it did not look like a very happy camp before. So you'd imagine that there'll be something of a response with Don Cowie in charge. But Rangers at the moment, again, that Aberdeen game last week, to me, Derek, felt like a big win. It felt like a game where Rangers, they weren't quite at their best. Some circumstances went against them. They conceded a goal kind of out of nothing, although it was poor defending. But it wasn't as if Aberdeen had much in the game. To then go and win that, I think, is important. To start so well after the winter break is vital, because we've not seen them really do that ever, apart from the recent title-winning season. So important they continue that, and then up to Perth for, is it a 12 o'clock kickoff, I think, against St Johnstone on Sunday? And I'm of the opinion that Rangers never play well at McDermott Park. So I'm glad you agree. So 2 big games. Let's see if they can keep it going. But loads of coverage to come as ever for people. So hopefully they're enjoying the content, and subscribe if they've not done so already.
Yeah, I think the best I've ever played was when we went up there under Advocate and they won 7-0. I'm sure Guy Vars's debut scored a couple. But that aside, I can't remember any scintillating performances up there. Incidentally, I watched that Aberdeen game. It might have been at the most northern point of the planet, I think, where someone watching Rangers were just 1,000 kilometres away from the North Pole. So there
was controversy in the Ibrox press gantry because you tweeted that, which I think you should maybe say to the remaining viewers. You tweeted a photo of you watching the Bolton game, and there was some concerns about favouritism there. But if you want to clear up your allegiance,
So basically, for a start, the Bolton game kicked off at 7:45. The Rangers game, of course, kicked off at 8. As you know, I cover the Bolton games, folks. So I sent a message in of me watching the game. However, it got abandoned after just 9 minutes due to a deluge of rain. So we then made our way to a little pub in Svalbard and stuck on the Rangers game. And then I watched that. But it was like you say, Josh. It wasn't a vintage Rangers performance, but it was one of those roll the sleeves up jobs, and just delighted to get the win. I've got to say, I think the noise I created when Todd Cantwell scored what turned out to be the winning goal reverberated around Svalbard. But it was super stuff. So have you watched Rangers in a more northerly point than that, folks? Let us know in the comments. You can let us know tomorrow if you have any random places you have watched Rangers. Let us know. That could be the topic of discussion tomorrow. But we'll call it a day for now. Thanks to everyone for interacting with the show as ever. And we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.